Hey, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt Your Now, the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to shake things up. First of all, I want to say before we get started, my friends and followers who know me very well know that I'm a crier. So I have my tissue handy because I know I'll cry at some point, probably, because I cry even if we're talking about puppies and stuff. But the other thing I wanted to say is part of the reason that I wrote my book, Disrupt Your Now, is because you never know what's going to happen in your life that is going to bring you challenges that you need to be able to pivot or adapt your business to meet those new challenges of your life or that new life stage. So tonight, I want y'all to meet my husband, Tom. This is Tom Brown. Tom is retired Navy, 26 years. We've been together for 36 years. And of those 36 years, we spent almost 13 years caring for first his dad and then my mother with Alzheimer's as their primary caregivers. His dad lived with us. I lived with my mom. So, we were fully immersed in it. So I'm having Tom on tonight to talk about some of the things that we've been going through because he's starting to have some memory issues. And so, you know what? We want to talk about the reality of it because, frankly, I'm tired of people being embarrassed, ashamed. I'm tired of the stigma. And I'm also, for business owners out there, I want you to know that you're doing a disservice to your company by not having an environment that employees feel like they can be honest with you. Because I know several people who knew something was going on and they were afraid to tell their employer until it was too late. And if you have an open, accepting environment, you can keep your employees for longer without losing that experience and let them shift over into different roles. So sorry I went off on this tangent, but welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you.
So tell them about when you were retiring from the Navy, everything we had going on.
Oh my gosh.
He really disrupted his now when he retired from the Navy after 26 years.
Well, I'll say, my father was living with us.
Not quite yet. Yeah.
But he was sick. We knew he was not doing well.
Yeah.
And his almost second wife, my mother died anyways, about 25 years before that. So,
okay. He's just nervous. So look,
I am nervous.
Okay. So when Tom retired with 26 years in the Navy, look, y'all, Tom had no children until he met me. I'm 14 years younger. So all these years he'd been in the Navy, he's like, woo, I'm going to play golf. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Next thing he does, he meets little old me and we get married, and I was with him for the last 6 years of his service. And so when he retired, he had two babies. One that was by that time she was 8 months old, and our oldest was 28 months old. And we had a new business.
Yeah.
And then right after he retired, we found out that his dad was having these problems and moved in. So he moved in with us. But Tom, you went from footloose and fancy free bachelor to literally change in your lifestyle.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a U-turn. It was
no. Yeah.
I want to say it's a right turn.
Okay.
Because it all worked out very well.
Yeah.
We did. It was quite I wouldn't say traumatic, but it was real. It was very different. And any of you out there who are in the service or have retired from the service or left the service, you know that life is not the same. There's a certain amount of order that you get used to. It's like being on time.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling Lisa that I would rather be someplace 20 minutes early than 30 seconds late. And you just learn that in the military. You learn it in a lot of ways. You learn it. Some people learn it in business, and some people learn it in the military. But it's a good policy. Because especially if you're in any kind of sales, whether you're selling yourself or whether you're selling a product or whatever, you don't want to be late for somebody signing a contract.
Yeah. But I was going to say,
got
So
off the
yes, he lived this nice, orderly life, and then he's got crazy me and 2 babies, and then his dad, and owned a business for, for the first time in his life. So those
Yeah.
were tremendous changes at one time. But, when we were caring for your dad, there was no information about what to do.
No, none.
Even the doctors were like, oh, he's just senile.
Yeah.
So that
That's-
made it even more difficult.
I remember, I'll forever remember the first time I took him to a doctor. It was not a psychiatrist or a neurological person or anything like that. It was just his doctor. And I took him in, and he said, well, he just old and doesn't remember anything. And he said, may have dementia. So I'm going, my father was sitting there trying to eat something that they'd laid on the table. And he was,
that wasn't food.
Yeah, it wasn't food. I think it was a pen or a eraser or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was sad, and we're laughing. We laugh about it now. But I think one of the main things is that people that are close to you and that you're close to, you have to be honest with them. That's the first thing. It's I'm going through this memory issue, and I told the guys I play golf with, I told one of a very good friend who used to be our vet, don't if I forget something, it's not because I don't like you or I'm trying to get rid of you as a friend. It's because I just forgot.
And I love that you did that, Tom, because most people are too embarrassed. You're like, crap, I can't remember stuff. But because there tends to be a stigma with memory, people are embarrassed to let their friends know. And it could be any reason. It could be vitamins being off. It could be blood. It could be Alzheimer's. It could be any number of things. But if you are having problems remembering things, let your friends and family know so that they can be there to support you, rather than, as Tom said, being left to feel like you just don't give a damn about me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's and it helped. It really did. It helped to get it out.
Yeah.
And then I started to get a new fear. Rockets and mortars going off are nothing like the fear that you have when you think that you're losing your mind. Well, anyway, for me, it was bone chilling. It really,
because you've been there and you saw.
Yeah. And we think it, by the way, we think it's okay. I had a brain scan and everything. The deterioration that I have is completely normal, but we sent it to a neurologist to read everything and read the scan and all that stuff.
Because make sure even the blood flow could be off. But I want to make a point about that worse than finding out something bad is the fear of not knowing. Because when you're afraid of something and you're not going and finding out about it, it becomes this huge thing in your head. It's this huge evil monster. And so you automatically go to the worst places. And I want to go back to, I was really surprised that he had told his friends at the golf course and everything, because most men are like, oh, macho, whatever. And so I was really surprised, but I was so happy. But the funny thing is, guys being guys, they joke about it. And like our friend who boards our dogs, he called last week, and we were in the same room, and I could, even though he didn't have him on speaker, I could hear him talking. And they were setting up a time for us to drop the dogs off. And I heard Bill say, well, I know you won't forget because Lisa's there and she'll make you remember. And so, it's open, it's out there, and they don't have to be afraid to say, are you going to remember this? And they also don't have to be afraid to call and remind him or text and remind him. But the other thing I want to say is, when you got that scan, so he went to his doctor and requested a brain scan, because we were like, you know what?
Well, my doctor, Joe said, if you're worried about it, we'll get you a brain scan.
Yeah, because we figure having a benchmark
Yeah.
First of all, knowing what's going on now, and then having a benchmark in the future. But my point about that is, and then I'm gonna let you talk again. I promise.
That's all right.
This is the way our whole marriage
I'm a
is.
good listener.
um, the, my point about that was the day that he went, the relief, the sense of relief that he had because this was out in the open. We had talked about it. He had gone and gotten this scan. He had no clue what the results were yet. But when he came out, the sense of relief was palpable on him. He just looked like 1,000 pounds had been lifted off his shoulders. And like I said, that's before he even knew what the results were. So that goes back to that fear thing.
Oh yeah, I told we were in bed one night and I told Lisa, or I had just gotten up. I'm an early riser. Lisa likes to sleep a little later than I do. But I told her, I said, I'm really afraid. This, I like I say, rocket mortar attacks aren't as fearful as this because all they can do is kill you.
Yeah.
They can't make a vegetable out of you. So, well, it could, I guess, but you know what I mean. But I told her I'm afraid of this. This is the most horrible thing that could ever happen. And since then, I've changed my attitude. It's not the most horrible thing that could ever happen. A lot of worse things could happen, and people deal with those every day. But you have to be ready for it, and you have to plan for it, and you have to understand. And your friends and your spouse or your children, whatever, they have to understand that it's not that you're no longer, I don't want to say normal, but you're no longer like you were. And it will probably get worse. It does for everybody, whether you have a disease of some type or what. But what the lady at the when I was through with the scan and they had done the preliminary, what was it? She said, "Oh yeah, we were joking about that." I said, "Well, I have a brain." She says, "Yeah, unfortunately, you got a brain, so neither one of us are going to be famous." So, because we've been talking about it, she scanned it and didn't see anything there. But anyway, it came back as positive until it goes to neuro guy.
Yeah. So what it came back as, to clarify, they said that yes, he has pockets of deterioration or whatever you want to call it, but for his age, his brain looks way better than the average. So they don't think so they don't think he has Alzheimer's. It still could be, not trying to scare you, but they don't think he does. But in his mind, he was already imagining that they were going to go and look at this scan and there was going to be like huge pockets of his brain gone. But as we mentioned earlier, he's still going to the neurologist in January to for them to look at blood flow and other things like that. And we have a benchmark.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing. Have a benchmark. It's not a bad experience if you could do it. It's not a bad experience, and if you feel like you need it. But the one thing you should do is, if it's you that has the problem, you should try to recognize, or not try, but try to recognize that it could be natural or it could be a problem. And even if it's the worst problem, there's a lot more medication for it now than there was for my father and my mother-in-law. It's not 100%, but there's very few neurologists around anymore that still take your money and don't do anything for you. I experienced that with my mother-in-law. They went in and he saw her for 10 minutes the first time I took her, and I was taking her every week. And after the first time, his assistant came in that wasn't a doctor, and I don't even think she was what do you call it,
PA or
anything like that. And her question was, "How's that memory today?" And finally, I got sick of it, and I said, we can get the medication anywhere. We don't have to come here and just give away our money. And I told her, I said, how do you think it is? That's not exactly what I said.
Lean in.
Oh,
You're
okay.
leaning out.
That's not
Sorry.
exactly the way I said it, but I was a sailor for a long time, so I said it more forceful than that, or with a little elaboration.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, the night that, or whenever, that you told me how afraid you were.
Yeah.
And y'all have to understand that even though we've gone through this with two parents, we were still dancing around it because the person that's feeling it is afraid. And it's kind of like, if I say it out loud, it's going to make it real. And the other person, me, you don't want to embarrass somebody. You don't want to make them afraid. So you're kind of dancing around it. You're trying to figure out what to do. But when he brought it up and talked about how afraid he was, I told him, we need to try to find out what's going on. But here's the other thing. Even if you get the worst possible news and they say, yes, we do believe you have Alzheimer's, you don't know that you'll ever get to that point that our parents got to, because, sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, but you could be leaving our house and get hit by a car and be killed. So you have to live for today. You have to live for the life that you have now, and you have to make the best of it. But don't be in denial, because when you're in denial, then you are denying yourself and your family and your loved ones the ability for you to get help before it's too late.
To live while you can.
Yeah.
And think while you can. And and nobody, I told several of my friends that, because I'd have to call up and I'd have a lunching engagement with somebody, and I'd have to call up and say, I'm sorry I missed it. And I'm not a real ass. I just forgot about it.
And sometimes they'd be like, "Oh no, you didn't miss it. It's tomorrow."
Right. That happened a couple of times too. So anyway, and it's not that bad. It just you blow it up, or I blew it up in my mind. So I was thinking that I couldn't remember anything.
Yeah.
Well, I learned a long time ago when I was younger that if you don't write it down, it never happened anyway. So I mean, that's a good thing if because nobody remembers everything. So anyway, I'm talking around in circles.
Hey, Amy, my friend Amy's here. You've met Amy. Vulnerability and courage are best friends. Yeah, Amy, thanks for your input. I know that Amy does a lot to support veterans and other people in her community with mental health and all types of things. So I appreciate your input, Amy, and your knowledge. I want to talk about some of the things that we learned about mistakes that we made in taking care of Roy and Mama, but also things that as a caregiver. So I want to talk about it from two different angles. If you are going to be a caregiver or may need to be at some point in time, some things that we learn, but also friends and family of caregivers.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
So I want to start first with those people.
Yeah.
Because unless you've been a caregiver, you have absolutely no idea how isolating it is to be a caregiver. And I'll be honest with you, that in many ways is way worse than the actual thing that you're going through, losing your loved one gradually. Because when you're there with them, you can't leave, you can't go out. And I remember one time my aunt, she was a real stickler for time. And she called me one day, thought she was being helpful. And I work for myself. So I was working from my mother's house. And my aunt lived right next door. My aunt called and said, I have 20 minutes before I have to mop the floor. I want you to go do anything that you want. And my first reaction is, shit, I don't have time to do anything in 20 minutes because I'm in the middle of work. But my next thought was, but if I don't do it, then she'll never offer again. So I'll tell you what I did. I had not gone anywhere for like 2 months, seriously, except to my office. I went to the grocery store that's like 200 yards from my mother's house and walked around and cried. And I was like, oh my God, thinking this is what it's like to be able to go to a grocery store, the thing that half of us hate to do. And then I made sure I got back before the 20 minutes was up. So my point with that is that if you think about somebody like me walking around a grocery store crying because they had forgotten what it felt like to even be able to go to a grocery store, you need to understand that your friends that are going through this are going to have times like that.
Yes.
And instead of asking them, what can I do? Say, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like an elderly friend of my mother's who kind of has been a second mom to me for my whole life. She would call and say, I'm bringing you dinner tonight. All I want to know is how many people are going to be there. Invite anybody that you want to come. I don't care how many. Just let me know how many. And she didn't say, can I bring you dinner? She told me, this is what I'm going to do. So that's one of the things that I try to do now with my friends who are caregivers is not to ask them what they need, but to tell them. And Tom and I are a lot like, I think a lot of people are like this. I can't, the things that you really need are the little things, the little bitty things throughout the day that there's no way that you can get somebody else to do them for you, or it's so overwhelming to even tell somebody. So you just say, okay, I'll let you know. And you don't,
Never
excuse
call
me,
back,
you don't,
never,
yeah. And you never ask them
Yeah.
to do anything. Right.
Yeah, right. Kitty was great about that.
Yeah, she was awesome.
But then again, she'd been there too.
Yeah, she had been there.
So
That same woman, a great family friend for decades, and her husband had Alzheimer's. And this is how great she was. And this is going to give some of y'all ideas for how you can help somebody that you love without embarrassing them and diminishing them. They had taken the wires out of the truck so that her husband couldn't drive, and he rewired it because he used to be a mechanic. So he takes off driving, and she's like, oh my God. So she started following him and driving behind him, and he pulled over by the road. She pulled over by the road, kind of back behind him, and he sat there for a minute. Then he pulled out and he started driving again. So she did too. Then he did it another time. And he got out and he came back to the truck, and he's like, who are you and why the hell are you following me? And this is a man that never cursed. But this is how brilliant she was. She said, I recognized you from my neighborhood and I am lost. And I'm afraid I won't be able to find my way home. Will you please help me get home? And he got in his truck and he turned around and she followed him. And she said he was driving perfectly, all the signals and everything. They got to her house. They drive up to her house where she lived with him. And he looked at her and said, well, I don't know where the hell Kitty is. So, but the thing that I love about that is she didn't try to convince him of who he was and who she was or anything. She kind of role played and tricked him, if you will, into getting him to do what she needed him to do for his own safety, because she knew that he was headed to the woods to go hike in the woods, and he could have very easily gotten lost. You want to tell them about when you walked with Mama that day?
Yeah. That was it's sad, but it's sort of nice.
Yeah, anyway. You have to laugh and smile at the things that you can take joy from.
I was going for a walk with her. She loved to walk. She didn't do it as much after she got sick, but she loved to walk. Anyway, she lived next to a not a mall, but a shopping center. And so we crossed the road into the parking lot of the shopping center. And then there was another road. There's another road that goes down beside it. And she went over to that road and started walking. And I said, Frida, slow down. Let's enjoy the scenery. And she just kept right on walking. And Frida could walk. I mean, she could walk.
Little 95-pound thing.
Yeah. So she keeps talking. Anyway, I caught up with her. I said, Frida, where are you going? She said, I'm going home. And I started to say, your home's back there. And I kept my mouth shut because I knew that about 4 miles from where we were, 4 or 5 miles, was where she was born, and up across the river from us. But it was, and she was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But part of it would have had to been through the woods on that road.
Because by then, though, she thought she was a child.
Yeah.
And she told Tom, my parents are worried about me. I need to go home.
Yeah.
They're going to be worried about me.
And I finally convinced her that we'll call them when we get back.
Yeah,
to
but
the house.
it started sprinkling rain.
Yeah, it started
and
sprinkling
that's
rain.
kind of how he was able to
I was
distract
able to,
her.
Yeah, distract her and say, we're going to, what I told her was, I'm going to get pneumonia. And she says, really? Anyway, so at that point, she turned around. We go back.
And you know what? That's so great, though, that you said that to her, because you knew how caring Mama was. And you knew if you made it about somebody else's well-being, that would trigger that empathy
not about
in her.
You know, she didn't like that. The funny thing was she loved sweets, and she loved pudding. And we'd sit there with the television on in the living room, and she would just be there, and I'd bring out the pudding, and she would virtually. By that time, you had to feed it to her, and but it was, she'd sit there and eat
she
pudding.
couldn't talk anymore.
No, she couldn't talk anymore. But she'd sit there and eat that pudding, and if you quit putting it up to her, she'd give you the dirtiest look.
But remember the look she gave you when you would first put the pudding in her mouth? She would go like this.
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
Tom got so much joy out of that because he would put that pudding in her mouth. She'd be like, her eyes would just light up. She was so excited. So even though she couldn't talk, she had no clue who we were. That chocolate pudding was delicious.
It was.
Yeah.
She was quite a lady.
She was, and so was your dad. Get back in this picture.
Oh.
He's trying to get out of it. This is another thing I want to say. The irony, my mother and his father loved each other so much. They were so close. And there's nothing that either one of them wouldn't have done for the other. But what Tom and I talked about after Mama got sick, the irony that if Roy had the choice and knew that they both were going to have it, if Roy could have had the choice and known that what we went through with him would benefit her, he would have chosen to go first. Because the fact that he did have it, we learned so much from all the mistakes that we made and the lack of information then, that it enabled us to help her better.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think happy is the word. I think she was content, except for the fear.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell that she had the fear, and then after a point, you lose that.
Yeah.
But once it comes to be, once it happens and it's there, that generally the patients don't have any more fear because they are afraid of. Frida was, I don't know so much with my father, but Frida was, she would hated loud noises.
Yeah.
And because she didn't understand them.
And taking her places.
Yeah.
Even taking her to the doctor was traumatic because she didn't understand. She couldn't walk by then. We had to pick her up and carry her out and all this. So y'all need to understand that it's like you're living your life in reverse. Yeah. And so think about, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but think about a baby. A baby doesn't understand why you're making them do these things. And so some of the things that you might make them do upset them or scare them. And it's the same thing with somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia, because eventually, they go back and back in time, and it's like her cardiologist told us. He said,
the good card, the one.
He said, if you're unlucky, you're going to die of cancer or a car accident or something like that. And if you're lucky and you don't die of one of those things, at some point you are going to come back around full circle and, gradually go back to being a baby. Does that happen to everybody? No, No, it doesn't. I mean, I've known some 90-some-year-olds that have a memory better than me. But the point is that we as a society need to learn to stop being so afraid to talk about this, so that people who are feeling worried about themselves feel more comfortable
Yeah.
confiding in their loved ones, confiding in their friends, and so forth.
Yeah, I told my general practitioner, Joe, uh, that what I was problems I was having, and he said, I'll give you a referral, get a brain scan, and he said, you know, he knew how much I drank during that one period.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah, that
Uh,
does not help the brain cells.
yeah,
When
and
you go,
this is when Tom was in that dark hole of fear and not facing it. And this is when I was like, well, he started drinking a lot.
Yeah.
And we've always been just social drinkers. He started drinking a lot and he started drinking every day. And then it got to be longer and longer every day. Then it got to be all day, like from when he went up to when he went to bed. I'm like, this is not the person that I married. And what was happening though is in his mind, he already knew that he was forgetting things that, and please correct me if I'm wrong. He already knew that he was forgetting things. So in his mind, he had Alzheimer's and he was going to end up like his dad and my mother. And I think I think you felt like if you drank enough that maybe you could die before the Alzheimer's got bad enough. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
that was not a conscious thought. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
have no doubt that it was subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. It-
But then you, at some point, you realized this is stupid.
why, if it is, why
Yeah.
live the last months, years of your life,
Mhm.
At the sot on the sofa somewhere?
Yeah.
It's like, but
Yeah, I mean, and at first when he was drinking a little more than, because like I said, we've always been social drinkers. So at first when he was drinking a little more, I was like, whatever, he's retired. And if he's happy, playing with the dogs, whatever, I don't care. But that's in the evening. Then it got earlier and earlier and earlier. I'm like, what the heck? Really, I said, what the hell? But I wish that I had broached it with him sooner than I did, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But you think about it. Oh, would you rather hurt somebody's feelings or would you rather them end up with cirrhosis of the liver or something? I mean, that was selfish
Either
on my
thing kills
part.
you, so.
Yeah, but cirrhosis
No,
is a lot more painful.
I still drink beer, but that's all I drink. And I used to go through during that time period, I went through a bottle of vodka in 2 days. That was,
Oh, yeah. And you had never, I mean, this was like,
never, even when I was in the Navy and young and traveling around the world and partying and stuff.
yeah.
That was not the only thing I did in the Navy, but it was being 22 years old and being in places like Hong Kong and Singapore and Japan. It was what's the matter?
Oh, I'm reading this and I'm going to cry, but I'm going to read it out loud for people who can't see it. So somebody on LinkedIn said, I want to thank you both for the courage to be on air with this tonight. The compassion and love between you is precious. This story is both unique and common. It needs to be widely shared. Thank you so much. When my friend AK, when I texted her last week and I said, yeah, Tom got the scan back and they said, first, whatever, they don't think it's something like Alzheimer's. They think it's, regular aging, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so now I can go back to being bitchy and bossy. And she died laughing. I'm not really bitchy and bossy.
No, you're not.
But
Sometimes
anyway.
a little bossy.
Well, yeah.
I was going to say something.
And I interrupted. Sorry.
But I was surprised how. I know one thing I was going to say. One of my friends, when I told him that the preliminary results of the scan was that I don't have dementia or Alzheimer's, and the guy said, "You don't have Alzheimer's, you have Alzheimer's.
Old timers.
Old timers.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, it's even if something comes back and it's bad, you know, we're a team.
yeah.
We'll take it on, and it's
That makes me think of something else. And I'm sorry, I talk so much, y'all. I talk more than him. But things that he says makes me think of things. So this is an example of something to look out for that your loved one may say. So it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago. Tom kept saying, I don't want to hold you back. And I'm like, you're not holding me back. What do you mean? Um, and I travel some with my business, not a lot. And it's when I was going to one of my things, and he said, I don't want to hold you back. I'm like, you're not going to hold me back. The only way you're going to hold me back is if you're an asshole and you try to keep me, some people are like that. I don't want to go, but I don't want you to go. I thought that's what he meant. I thought he meant that he hoped him not wanting to go wherever I went somewhere wouldn't hold me back. But then later I realized that you were already going down that road of fear of your future.
yeah,
And
yeah, but subconsciously.
yeah, and
Because,
so in his mind, we were already like we were with mama. He was imagining me being stuck in the house and crying when I got to go to the grocery store, you know?
Yeah.
And so reminder of what he said, I don't want to hold you back. That sounds very benign, but it's your loved ones are going to say things like that, cryptic, and you kind of need to learn how to read between the lines because they don't want to just come out and say, I'm afraid because I can't remember a damn thing. But I have to say, my memory's always been crap.
Yeah. If you don't, I think I've said this earlier. If you don't write it down, it never happens.
Yeah.
And that's, I have to use that a lot now. But it's not a bad policy for anybody. Yeah.
Well, when Mama first started having memory issues, I'm like, what the hell? You're the one that keeps me on track. Because she would call me and be like, don't forget, we're going wherever in a few days at such and such time. She was so very organized. And my friends that I've known for my lifetime, they know I've never had a great memory. I mean, even back in college, they used to tease me and go, I can't remember. Because I have a habit of not remembering things. And then in a couple of days, I'll remember it. I'll be like, well, why couldn't I remember that? So my synapses already aren't firing. I don't know what the heck's going to happen to me 15 years from now. What are some of the other things that we've learned taking care of them?
Just even though they might not know who you are, you're there.
Yeah.
And, that's a big thing to them, I think.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the next one.
Okay. Do you want me to talk about something else?
Yeah, I was going to talk about when she died, but I don't want to talk about it.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll both end up bawling.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll write the story down. But Tom is right. Even if they don't know who you are, they know you love them. They know they feel safe. Sorry, my allergies are kicking up. They know that they feel safe. They know that they are afraid of some things, but they're not afraid of you.
Yeah.
And so the things that you can do, that helps ease their mind. But I do also want to tell y'all something else funny. So when I was living with Mama and she had no clue who I was, every night she'd be like, now who else is here besides us? And I'd be like, nobody. And, trying to be calm, but I wanted to go, nobody's here. So I'd be like, nobody's here but us, Mama, just us and the cats. And
she loved the cats.
Yes, she did. So there was this one morning I got up, I couldn't find my purse. I looked everywhere. I called Tom. I called my people that work for me. Will you look in the office? I looked in my car. I looked all over. And Mama came out and she's like, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but there was somebody else in the house last night. I'm like, no, there wasn't. There was nobody in the house. Hold on a second. Sorry, y'all. She's following me all around the house, and she had a tiny little house that we grew up in, tiny, but she's following me everywhere. There was a man in the house last night. Mama, there was not a man in the house. I'm trying to find my purse. Well, I went in the basement, and the glass was taken out of the door. There had been somebody in the house. Somebody had broken through 4 doors, come upstairs, taken my purse. She saw them. So when she saw him, he turned around and left, but my purse was right there inside my door. He picked it up and left. And I'm laying in there asleep. I never even knew it. So she had no clue who I was. And, very little short-term memory, but she remembered that man was there. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I would have ever figured it out. Obviously, we would have figured out that the house had been broken into, but I might not have figured it out then and put it together. I would have thought, just dumb me, that I had lost it.
Yeah, she was funny.
She was. But some of the other things about being a caregiver, and this is really hard for anybody who is a caregiver, because most people who are caregivers always put other people before themselves anyway. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a fine one to say that, because I did not take care of myself.
Well, in either case, but it is advice that if you can do it, if you can take care of yourself while there's something like this is happening, you need to at least take advantage of every possibility you have.
Yeah.
Because people aren't, that's the other thing. Society is not real big on being around you when something like that's going on, because number one, they don't understand. Number two, they're afraid.
They're afraid it's going to happen to them, so they don't, know.
And it will sooner or later. It may be completely natural, but if you live long enough, you're going to lose some brain cells. It's like the old-timers type thing. But it's hopefully that's what it is. If it's not, I told Lisa after we were talking about it for a while, and I was kind of deep down depressed, if you will, and I figured out that we didn't have an argument, but we had a pretty hefty discussion a couple of times. And this is before it may have been right after I made the appointment. And we, in the living room, in the dining room, the den. I can't remember which room it was, but it was the den. I told her, I said, well, I can't say shit, can I?
Yeah, you can. You can say shit. I've said much worse in here.
If it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
Don't want it to happen, and you don't want it to happen. But if it happens, it happens. And at least you have a lot of experience with it.
Well, and just taking action, though. Y'all, if y'all could have seen how he felt, his demeanor and everything before going and having that scan, and that day when he walked out after having it, before he even had any clue what it was going to say, just the fact that he had taken action made him feel better.
Once you know that you may not know what it is yet, but you've done what you can. Yeah. And Lisa did what she could. She didn't make me go, but I think we came to a mutual agreement that I should go. And I went to the doctor, my primary care doctor up in Charlotte Courthouse, and I talked to him about it. He's a great guy. He was a Navy corpsman before he got out. Anyway, so that's why he's such a good guy. And he said, if you're worried about it, get a scan. Get a scan. We'll set
Yeah.
you up for a scan.
Yeah.
That's it. And then, I was called. I had my hand here, and my 5 cards here, and he had his 5 cards, and he called.
Yeah.
He said, "We'll set you up for it." And within 24 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Within 24 hours, I had an appointment with at the hospital, and they put me in that tube and all that stuff around my head and all that stuff. I've been there before with some other things, but not my
Yeah.
brain. But anyway,
But doing that, though, going back to what we talked about, taking care of yourself, by being proactive, it helps me and him be able to take better care of him. It helps us know what to expect, but it also helps me to get myself ready.
yeah, and that's a biggie.
And as I said, that's part of the reason I wrote Disrupt My Now, because there's so many people, and it might not be Alzheimer's, it could be all kinds of things, but there's so many times throughout life when we own a business and life changes. It throws things at you that you're not expecting, and you might own a business. A lot of people end up shutting down their businesses because they cannot adapt. So in order to take good care of yourself, you still have to have things of your own. You can't just make your entire life be about the person that you're taking care of, because then you lose yourself. So whether you already own a business and you need to adapt it so that you have more freedom, more time, and so forth, or whether maybe you don't own a business, but you have a job and you know that at some point you might need to become a caregiver. It gives you time that you could plan, hey, what could I do on my own from home while I'm caring for whoever it is? So it gives you that chance to plan what you might do to take care of yourself and them.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better than walking into it blind.
Yeah.
You, my father was, we had no idea there was anything wrong with him. And sometimes, I guess for older people or even for younger people, that stress is it bring, even though it's physical, stress can sometimes bring it to the forefront. My mother died, let me see, when I was overseas, and they flew me back.
You were in Vietnam,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But anyway, so he was by himself for 20 something years, wasn't he? Yeah, over 20 years. So, but he met Eunice, and they had they were soulmates.
Yeah, when I met you, they had already been together 15 years.
Yeah. So they were all but married, but they didn't want to get married.
They lived next door to each other.
Yeah.
So they could be together, but not.
Yeah. And she got sick. It was a cancer.
Well, they think it was cancer, but
They
she was like in her 80s, and she goes, why am I going to let you test me? Because I'm not going to do chemo. I'm not going to do radiation. Yeah. So they're pretty sure it was cancer, but he became her caregiver because that was Roy. And he went from working part-time and them going out dancing 2 nights a week to only the 2 of them, very isolated, 80 years old. And he sat there for like a year and a half, cared for her until she passed away. So that grief and that stress,
well, stress will
we really believe triggered.
Yeah, stress will definitely mess with your head, inside your head. I mean, it may not be physical. Well, I don't know.
Boy, it messes with your whole body.
Yeah, with your whole body. So it would mess. Yeah. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So the main thing that we want to get across with this is Tom and I don't know everything. We're not doctors, but we've been together 36 years. And of that, almost 13 years of it, we were full-time primary caregivers for 2 different people. One who lived in our home with us and our babies, and the other I lived in the home I grew up in with my mother, and Tom stayed in our home, but it's only a couple miles apart. But so for almost 13 years of the 36 years we've been together, and that reminds me of something else. People are going to tell you, you're not doing it right. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that?
Yeah.
We were the only people in our family who'd ever been caregivers for somebody with dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever. And most people have never done that. And
Never even
you would
close
be
to it.
surprised how many people will tell you everything that you're doing wrong
Yeah.
and everything that you should be doing.
And some of them are relatives.
Well, yeah. And we love them very much. But really, sit back up.
Oh, sorry.
He really what's going on though with that is their fear and their denial. But you have to be really careful. If you're a caregiver, blah, 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 tune people out and just tell them, please stop telling me what to do. If you want to do it, you can do it the way you want to do it. So y'all need to be, if you're a caregiver, you have to stand up for yourself. And if you're not, if you know somebody who's a caregiver, please shut the hell up. If you're not going to be helpful, don't tell them what to do or how to do it. If you know what to do and how to do it, then do it. Don't tell them what to do. And I'm sorry that I'm sorry I sound so,
Like that's
but
a sore spot.
it just makes it so much harder for somebody who is already giving their life to help somebody else and giving up much of their own life. So two sides. If you're the caregiver, stand up for yourself and you can ask nicely. But if you're the person who's telling other people what to do, please just don't do that. Please tell them what you're going to do to help them. Like Kitty said, I'm going to bring y'all dinner. I don't care how many people are going to be here. She didn't try to tell me, you need to do this and you need to do that.
One other thing I bring up, the doctor that was Frida's primary care doctor was a great guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say his name because he's still practicing.
Yeah, he was awesome though.
Yeah, he was. And then after Frida died, we were someplace at one of the
Cantaloupe
events.
Festival.
Yeah, Cantaloupe Festival. And most of you don't know what that is, but it's Cantaloupe.
Whatever, local
It's
festival.
like a fair, not a fair, but a
It's just a
big
festival.
party.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was there and we went over and were talking. And it was only then. Now, I've known this doctor for years and years and years, right? I mean,
Several.
Yeah. So he said, well, what I never told you because it wouldn't be ethical was my mother was going through the same thing. And I'm going, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but anyway, that was really unique. He is a special person.
Yeah, he is.
He really is.
He is. She loved him.
And he's the one that got us going to he's the one that called me and told me that there was a new neurologist in town and he had met him and he also had some colleagues that knew about him and he said, take her to see him.
Yeah.
And we did with a brain scan. He said, there's nothing. He said, he told us, the neurologist said, if I can do anything for you two, come see me. If you need any advice or anything, or you're having a hard time, come see me. But I don't need to. He said, and I had to call.
Or if we just wanted him to see her, he would.
Yeah, he would.
But that there wasn't
a
need for him to see him. Something that you said, I'm going to do my ADD thing now. Oh, I remember it. Something else I'm going to tell y'all not to do. Even if somebody cannot talk, doesn't know who people are, cannot interact, they are still humans.
Yes.
They can still hear you.
They can still hear.
So stop talking about them like they're a stuffed animal over in the corner. A woman came to see Mama one day. At least she came.
Yeah.
So bless her heart, at least she came. And very, very few people did come. But she sat there and looked at her. Mama was like maybe 5 feet away from her. And she goes, she looks terrible.
Yes.
And I wanted to smack her across the face.
I smack her, strangle her.
And I nicely asked her to please leave. And then I walked outside with her and I told her politely, I'm like, you can't talk like that about her, around her, because at some level she understands, even if it's only by the tone of your voice. So I don't care if people don't know who you are, they can't talk, whatever. They are still human beings and they still need to be treated with respect.
Exactly. And,
Respect and dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of what we went through.
Yeah. So our main message to y'all, there are several main messages. If you are worried about your own memory, please talk to your doctor and don't just say, I'm worried about my memory. And then if they go, oh, don't worry about it, go on, press it. Try to try to have some kind of testing, some kind of something done to help you get a benchmark for where you are now, because there may be no problem. But if you get a benchmark now in a year or two, there'll be something to compare it to. Don't be afraid. Fear is much worse than reality, because fear becomes reality. It becomes reality, and it may never actually be reality.
It is in your head.
Yeah.
Or it is in my head.
In most people's. So, and if you have a loved one who is experiencing memory issues, tactfully, kindly try to talk with them about it and encourage them to try to find out what's going on. Sometimes it's just a matter of vitamins being off, like B12 and B complex or whatever.
Sometimes it's just getting old.
Well, yeah.
Like
But
me.
so that's for the person who's feeling it and the person who loves them. And then for people who you may not be going through it on your own, but if you know people who are, please just try to be supportive of them in any way that you can, that doesn't add more stress to their life. And I know I started out with this. I'm going to go back to it. Don't say, oh, you remember such and such. Don't you remember? Or I already told you. And believe me, that's hard to do, because sometimes I even find myself doing it with Tom, and then I'm like, okay, I got to quit doing this. So, I mean, we're only human, but try to do a better job of that, of not reminding them, because it doesn't matter how many times you say, oh, you remember. If they don't remember, they don't remember. They may remember later, but at that moment in time, if they don't remember, they don't remember.
That's true.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, except that we were lucky. Yeah, we got to do it.
Yeah, we were. It's the hardest thing that both of us have done in our lives, but we were blessed that we were able to do it. Am I happy that we had to go through it and that our parents had to go through it? No, I'm not happy.
No, I don't mean
But yeah, but we were blessed to be able to be with it. We look at it as we were able to help them in this transition from this life to the next. And that's an honor, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. Sorry, but anyway, I don't think there was anything else really that we
No, that's
wanted to
about
say.
it. Just be kind and
Yeah.
thoughtful,
Yeah.
and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Just be kind and thoughtful, and don't, like Lisa said, don't ask them if they remember.
Yeah.
Or if he remembers or if she remembers, because they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a fact of life.
Mhm.
You can there are things you can do. My father, he was a voracious reader, and he did that right up until he got
Yeah.
really sick. Matter of fact, he was still writing his book.
Yeah.
Somewhere we have that book he was
Mhm.
writing.
Yeah.
But so it wasn't like he was you're not sitting around in bed comatose. And Frida was the same way. I mean, she was there. And that's what Lisa was talking about. Don't come in and talk about them. Don't, don't the question, how you feeling today? Or like that doctor said,
How's that
how's
memory?
that memory today? Because they're liable to smack you in the mouth.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were lucky that neither of the people we took care of, my father or Frida, was violent.
Yeah.
And that is something that makes it harder to deal with. And there are a lot of cases where people do get violent, and it's not, it just makes it harder for the caregiver.
Yeah, and because we were lucky enough to not have to go through that, sadly, we don't have any advice.
Yeah.
I mean, the closer that Mama came to being violent was, and my mother never cursed, but she's like, "Get the hell away from me," you know. But
she did like that pudding though. If you want to get on the good side, you can sit down beside her and give her a spoonful of pudding.
Yeah.
She was in great shape.
Well, I just want to say, Tom, thank you so much for joining me. It takes a lot of courage to come out and talk about something like this, and the fact that you're willing and able to share your feelings and what you're going through to help other people. I'm really proud of you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyway, don't be.
All right, y'all. I will see you next week, and thanks for joining us. Yeah. I hope something that we said will help you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.